report should be mailed out today. So we're a third of the way through the semester. Talk to you a little bit about grades and what you should be looking at in terms of how to check your grade and make sure that everything is there. Second, I will go over the economic systems and how when we move from one system to the other, whichever direction we're going, we're either picking up government intervention or adding to individual freedom or taking away from individual freedom, right, in place of government intervention. So we'll talk about how that works. And that is what we went over last week. Also talk about the 2 assignments that you should have done on Monday because we wanted you to focus on your grades. This week, we're going to take a look at circular flow models, and it is basically a graphic representation of those economic systems that we discussed last week. So go ahead and open your Canvas homepage. Even just came in, let me mark her here. Okay, so a couple of things. I wanted to talk about your grades. So one of the things, and I had gone over this very early, is your grades in Aries are updated every day at 3:30. The grade in Aries is reflective of everything that we've done in the class. The grades in Canvas are only those grades that we've used as a platform to distribute and collect information or assignments. So the grade that you have in Canvas is not reflective of your overall grade, and you should never use that. Log into Aries, check Aries, and that will have your grade. Now, when you check your grade in Aries, you want to check for 2 things. 1, the work that you turned in, I show as having you turning it in. 2, you want to check and make sure that the score recorded in Aries is the grade that you actually got on the assignment. And if there's a question or issue, you should let me know on that. But that is, in terms of grades, where you need to check. You need to check Aries, not Canvas, because Canvas does not have things that you do in formative, in TCI, or in School City. So it's not reflective even probably of 30% of your grade. So you don't want to rely on that as having that as your overall grade. Aries has that for you. All right. Any questions on that? Okay, so last week we took a look at economic systems, and we'll go over this quick. Again, I just want to show you sort of the transformation from one system to another and what we lose and what we gain. The system analysis that was on Go Formative. So I'll open that up and show you, as well as the case study should have been done yesterday. So this, remember, we did in class. It was just a matter of you submitting it once you got the information from the second group, as well as this case study. In the case study, you wanted to make sure that you use your school email address as your email address on this assignment, and then your real name so that your scores will transfer over for you. Those you should have done on Monday. It's still open till the 25th, but I wanted you to focus on your first quarter grades before you did either one of those assignments. All right. Get back here to where I want to show you. So looking at the 3 most common economic systems, one thing that I wanted to emphasize from last week is this idea that when we look at these systems, all right, and let me draw some arrows here for you. When we look at these systems, all right, if we're going from one to another, what we have is a transformation on how and what and who decides what things are going to be produced in society. So if we were to start with the top row of countries, we look at a centrally planned or command economy, such as North Korea, the government makes all of the decisions. They decide what resources to use, they decide how to allocate the resources, and then they decide how to distribute those finished goods and services once they're created. As we move from left to right, France is more of a mixed economy. Right? France is more of a mixed economy. So as we move from North Korea to a country like France, we lose some government intervention and control of the economy and start adding in individual control of the economy. And as we move from a mixed system to a market system like we have in the United States, we further lose even more government control and add more individual control. And so if you go down to the second row of countries, you start with Hong Kong, which is one of the freest economic systems in the world, you have very little government control. But as you move to a country like South Africa, you lose some individual control over the economy and economic decisions in that society as the government has more and more control. And then when you get to a communist country like Cuba, you have very little individual control and much, much more government control. And then it would be the same thing coming back with the third row of countries and economic systems. Iran has a very traditional centrally planned command system. The government has strict guidelines in terms of what goes on, mostly because of traditions and how conservative we would consider their society compared to others. As we move to a country like Japan, you'll see more individual freedom, less government control. Then you get to the United Kingdom, very similar to our economy. You'll have some government decisions being made, but for the most part, it's individuals in control of that. And so you want to understand the shift there as we move from one system to the other, what we're gaining, what we're losing. It's all based on who's making the decisions. In the far left, in a centrally planned or command economy, it's almost always the government. In the far right, in a market system, it's almost always the individual or the business or the firm that's making the decision. And then when you get in the middle, it's a mix, right? It could be 60-40 individual versus government. It could be 60-40 government versus individual. But for the most part, that is what you're looking at. Any questions on that? Okay, so in your Canvas course, go ahead and go to Module 6, which is week 6. And open that up. We'll start from the beginning. All right, so as I said, this week we're going to take a look at circular flow models. And all circular flow models are graphic representations of the economic systems that we have. You want to be able to explain the 3 most common circular flow models as it relates to a command economy, mixed economy, and market economy. Compare and contrast the similarities and differences between those 3 circular flow models, and the biggest difference is going to be how much government is involved. And then be able to identify economic systems just by looking at a circular flow model. All right, and if you go ahead and click next, you'll be set, so I'll let you do that. All right, so in a circular flow model, as I said, all this is a graphic representation of an economic system. And so we'll start with the one that has the fewest amount of exchanges. Everywhere that you see an arrow there, that is an economic exchange. In a circular flow model, with it being a graphic representation, one thing that you want to understand is that there's two parts to the system. There is a factor market and there is a product market. And I'll explain what both of those mean. So we have a factor market. Right, which is on the household side. And that is just what you think it would be. It's the factors of production, the land, the labor, the capital, and the entrepreneurship. Those are generally owned by you, myself, others who live in households. We own the factors of production in a market system, and when we go find a job and go work, we sell those to businesses, and in exchange, right, they give us wage, rent, dividends, they give us money. The other side of the economic system is the product market. The product market is where businesses and firms take the goods that were sold and take the factors of production, create more of those goods that were sold or actually put up for sale. In exchange, households will pay for those goods and services. So in this instance, we're going to have 4 exchanges at a minimum. We're going to have 4 exchanges at a minimum, right? So the exchange for the factors of production to businesses and firms, we get money in return for that. Households, you and I, we take that money, we spend it on finished goods and services. Those are the other 2 exchanges. So all this is a graphic representation of what we have going on in the economic system. So any questions on that? Okay, so take a minute and scroll down to a mixed system. So you'll scroll down to this part here. All right, in a mixed system, we have the same thing. We are going to have a product market and a factor market. Product market, again, remember, is where finished goods and services are exchanged for money. Factor market is where land, labor, and capital is exchanged for money. But in this, we have a minimum of 8 exchanges because of government being involved, right? So we have the government involved in terms of taxes and purchases. So you can see we have 1, right? In the factor market, households exchange land, labor, and capital to firms in exchange for money. We also have the government involved in government-owned factors, as well as the collection of taxes. The government then takes those, right, taxes, spends money on different items. In the product market, we have finished goods and services flowing to households and households paying for those finished goods and services. So if you look at, right, you have 1 exchange here, 2 exchanges, 3 exchanges, 4 exchanges, just like a market system. But then you have 5, 6, 7, 8. You're going to have a minimum of 8 exchanges in a mixed system. All right, go ahead and scroll down to the last one. And this one is the most complicated of them all. So take a minute to do that. Okay, so an essentially planned system, again, we're going to have a product market and a factor market. So if we divide this in half again, and let me get a better color because that's not really showing up very well. Red. Okay. So in a centrally planned or command economy, we'll have the same thing. We'll have a factor market, which is provided by the households, right? So households basically take their land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship and put it into the market. Here we have the product market, which is finished goods and services. And that's exchanged with the households. Here, as you can see, there's 16 exchanges. There's the 8 exchanges that we have in a mixed system, plus an additional 8 more exchanges because the government is involved in all of the planning. So in a centrally planned or command system, what we have is 16 exchanges at a minimum. And you can see that there, right? Goods and services attained by consumers go to households. In exchange, right, they're going to offer money or time or services for that. You see the purchases of goods and consumers, purchases of goods and consumers by retailers, and then the government intervention in that. You have taxes and government services back and forth as we move down. You have net taxes paid by households, government services used by businesses, which are paid for by those taxes. And then as you move forward, the wages, rent, dividends paid to households, wages paid by government to households, money paid by businesses for production. Everything that we have going on, the government has a say in that instance. So all 3 circular flow models show the exchanges that take place in an economic system. Your market system has 4 exchanges at a minimum. Your mixed system has 8 exchanges at a minimum. Your centrally planned or command has 16 exchanges at a minimum. And that would make sense that government is involved in all of the distribution, allocation, and decision-making regarding resources. As you take away some government decisions, you would take away exchanges. And as you go to a free market economy, or essentially a free market economy, you would have very little government intervention. So you have a minimum of 4 exchanges. Are there any questions on that? Okay, so go ahead and click next. And as you can see here, we're going to do a system comparison real quick, just to make sure that we understand the difference between, say, a command or centrally planned, and then the extreme to that, which would be a market system. All right. So in a system comparison, we're going to take a look at the United States and North Korea. Who owns or controls the means of production, which is just another way of saying factors of production? How are those resources allocated? And then once we have finished goods and services, how does that distribution take place? So we're going to divide you up into 2 groups. Group 1, if you click on this, it'll go into your formative. You can log into your formative ahead of time if you wanted to click it. But group 1, you'll do questions 1, 3, and 5 regarding the United States. Group 2, you'll do 2, 4, and 6. All right, you'll do 2, 4, and 6. So group 1, you're going to answer questions 1, 3, and 5 based on the United States. In the United States, who owns or controls the means of production? In the United States, how are productive resources allocated among people and businesses? And in the United States, how are goods and services distributed? And then if we have anything like Medicare, Social Security, how is that distributed? Group 2, you're going to do questions 2, 4, and 6, right? In North Korea, who owns or controls the means of production? In North Korea, how are productive resources allocated among people and businesses? And in North Korea, how are goods and services going to be distributed? All right. So make 2 breakout rooms. We'll have about 7 or 8 in each room. Group 1 is going to be Aldair, Alex, Braden, Delia, Haven, Isaiah, Julio, Yasmin. So you'll do questions 1, 3, and 5. Armando, Caesar, Daniela, Guadalupe, Jake, Matt, and Tim, you'll do questions 2, 4, and 6. Sorry, you know what? I didn't give you enough time. I had set the timer wrong. So it's still the same groups. Breakout room 1, you'll still do 1, 3, and 5. Breakout room 2, you'll still do 2, 4, and 6. I'm sorry, but I didn't set it for enough time. You wouldn't have been able to finish, which would have been horrible. So you're going to go back into the same breakout rooms, but now this time with the right one. So I apologize. Okay, so you guys are questions 1, 3, and 5. And the thing to remember in the United States, who makes most of the decisions?
Okay.
Right? So in the United States, the decisions are made mostly by who? Individuals or government?
Oh, the president. Oh, the government.
Well, no, most of the decisions about the economy are made by individuals, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you go to a store, the government doesn't tell you what to buy. The government doesn't tell the store what to sell. So remember that when you focus on 1, 3, and 5.
I think number 1's the government.
Yeah. So you guys have 2, 4, and 6, and as what you guys just said, right? In a command system like North Korea, the government is involved in every economic decision. So you're correct on that. Just remember that when you're answering 4 and 6 as well.
Mr. Greg, how do I get back to the breakout room? You're on mute.
Were you in 1 or 2?
I was in group 2.
Okay, there you go. It should let you go now. All right, we should have everybody back now. So to mix it up, we will start with group 2. What I would do is I would open this in your formative. While group 2 presents, group 1, I would write down what they're sharing with us. And that way you'll be ready to submit. So all we did basically was take what we know about market systems and commander centrally planned systems and apply them to 2 different countries. One, we know commander centrally planned, one, the market. So group 2, you're going to share with us, in North Korea, who owns or controls the means of production?
The government.
Yep, factors of production, all right, are owned by the government. All right? In North Korea, group 2, how are productive resources allocated among the people?
By centralization.
Yep, by centralization. So basically, the government will collect
Oh, wow.
all of the resources and then distribute those to firms, businesses, people, whoever needs them. All right. The government's going to decide who gets what and basically how much of that they're going to get.
Yay, we did it. Camera's on. We're going to get back on track.
Then on 3,
So sorry about
oops,
that.
my mouse is screwed up.
So, share my screen again. So you guys are answering the question number 2, and it's still on the same lines, 1 through 24. So what we just read. How does the subhead hint at the information in the section, knowing that the subhead was traveling light?
Okay. So then on question 3, group 2, what do we have in terms of distribution?
Still through the government.
Yep. The government redistributes all of the goods and services that are produced. So basically, firms and businesses will produce those items. The government will collect those and then redistribute that the way that they see fit. All right. Let me put this back in here. All right. So the government here will decide who and how much is allocated to each firm or business. So group 1, you'll want to make sure that you type this in on yours. And then on 1 is group 2 said correctly there, right? Who owns or controls the means of production? The government. The government owns all of the resources. So group 1, you'll talk about the United States. Group 2, you should type yours in on this. So group 1, in terms of who owns or controls the means of production in the United States, who is that?
Individuals.
Yes, individuals and businesses own the factors of production in the United States. Group 1, in terms of resource allocation, how are those productive resources allocated amongst people and businesses?
Market system.
Market system. In a market system, who makes the decisions? Once again, it's going to be who?
Us. Okay.
Yep. Individuals and firms will decide how to use the resources that they have. Or that they own. All right. And then the last one, when we have finished goods and services, we have finished goods and services, generally, how are those distributed?
They are distributed by businesses or like organizations,
Yeah,
and then consumed by consumers.
that's exactly right. So the distribution generally takes place in the market. So the distribution generally takes place in the market, with the exception, right, in this country, that the government will sometimes provide some help, right? So food stamps, unemployment insurance, the pandemic stimulus check that we saw take place earlier, those would be exceptions to that. All right, those would be exceptions to that. So let me save. Okay. So I saved this, I'll come back to it, but I just want to show you. Once you've put in all 6 boxes, all right, once you've put in all 6 boxes, you can go to your blue submit button. And if you did this in Go Formative, right, what you'll want to do is after you hit the submit button, because you have all 6, your submit button should be down here. You're going to copy your URL up here, or you take a screenshot, or you can copy and paste the text, but this would be the quickest way. Go down to website URL, just like you did before, the case study from last week, submit your assignment, and you'll be set, all right? You'll be set on that. So, we get out of that because it's logged in as me. All right, so after that has been submitted, all you need to do before we meet next Wednesday is this case study. This one's only 9 questions. As I said, here, remember to use your school email address. And then put in your real name here so that you get the points that you deserve. And the scenario this week is you and your older brother are completely different. This summer you had a full-time job and you always come up with ideas to make more money. From babysitting to painting fences, you're always working. Your brother, on the other hand, had a part-time job over the summer and spends his time relaxing and playing video games. To be honest, you're a little jealous of his lifestyle. You prefer to work less, and you wonder if there's a sensible alternative to capitalism. You get online and come across a controversial video called "Is Capitalism Moral?" And that's the link there. So you'll watch that short clip, talk about these 3 questions here, all right? Talk about some of the government advantages and disadvantages of that. And then you're texted a link to your brother, and a few minutes later, he sent you a video called "Inequality is Real," and it was created. Talk about that, and then in your last question there, do you think capitalism moral? Why or why not? Same thing, after you hit the submit button, you'll want to come up here, copy and paste your URL. When you hit your submit button here, you can put that in a text box if you want. I mean, it's the same thing. It'll show up as a URL, or you can do this here, and it'll take me right to your responses. All right, that's all you have to do between now and next Wednesday. So if you don't need any more help or have any more questions, you can go ahead and log off. If you didn't get a chance to put up all of the responses from the other group, I'm going to put that picture up right now, and that will show you. So let me get back to today's